Beautiful, buddy. Mate, we're on. Hey, Benny, thanks for doing this, mate. We were just talking before we press record about how some games are defined by sort of key moments. And obviously, you've been coaching a lot longer than I have, but it's something that I've started to notice as well. Like if you look through some of the games that we lost this year, um, a certain line out goes our way, we might have won that game. We don't give away a penalty, we might have won a game. The ball goes to hand. It seems like a lot of games are defined by small moments, even in games where, like, clearly you guys flogged us on the weekend, but there was still a few small moments from what I can see. Have you noticed something similar as well? And have you worked out a way to coach teams how to win those small moments?
I certainly haven't worked out a way to coach a team to win those small moments. If I did, I'd be probably coaching a lot higher, because I think that's almost like the secret recipe, the secret spice is that if you can work that out, you're going to have your team winning most games, aren't you? But mate, as we were talking about, I want the same opinion. I can trace all our losses back, and you go, if we just did this in probably 2 or 3 key moments, there's a whole different outlook to the game. So mate, I totally subscribe to that theory. And normally, obviously, you guys lost on the weekend, but it's never as bad as it seems when you watch it on video as well. I think as a coach, you can show your playing group that, if we just won these 1 or 2 moments, we could have won the game. And I guess that's about being, sort of switched on for 80 minutes, isn't it? Those really good teams, they have less of those moments. The poorer teams have more of those moments where they switch off. So it's about being switched on for 80, I reckon.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You kind of see teams that traditionally win a lot of those moments. Like to me, I played a lot against Eastwood over my career, and Eastwood seemed to win a lot of those moments. But I've never had anyone come to me and say, this is why it happens. It just seems to be something that some teams do better than other teams.
Yeah, well, I think that's fair. And, obviously this week there was the state of origin. Everyone says Queensland does that better, don't they? I mean, when it comes to rugby league, they win those big moments, apparently, and they all go back to, there was that Stephen Crichton intercept. Sorry if you're not a rugby league fan, but Stephen Crichton intercept, and there was 8 Maroons that went back and only 2 New South Wales guys. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if East would win those big moments, because I've certainly lost a few big moments myself as well. But it probably feels like that when you're a successful team and club, I guess.
Yeah. How did you ride the wave of the early season for you guys? Because it was a few tough results early on. Was it something that you knew that you were just building as you went, and you'd start to hit your stride towards this part of the competition? Or, like, how did you process that as a coach going through that?
It was quite difficult. Like, we're traditionally a slow starting team, only because we don't, for some reason we don't have the best off seasons, and maybe that's something I could fix in my coaching. But I knew we'd start slow, but we probably started slower than anticipated. So that it was. Well, I thought we'd come good, but I thought if we were playing it, I'd like us to be playing, say, at start of year 5 or 6 out of 10. I thought we were playing like 4 or 5. So it was blip below where we needed to be. And you have to lose 1 game, it's okay. 2 games, and we should have lost our 3rd game as well against the 2 Blues, and they missed the kick in front to win the game. So, we could have been 0-3, and then in front of the boys might listen, but in front of the boys, I wouldn't have hit the panic button, but internally, I certainly would have been panicking. But we also knew there was a couple of areas. Our line-out, mate, was literally operating at 50%, and you just can't win a football game if your line-out's at 50. Our scrum was at 70%. So I knew if we cleaned up a couple of areas, we would get better as well.
Yeah, so it was just a matter of you could see that in your head if you remove the emotion of it. Obviously, no one likes to lose, and in some ways, losing shines a light on all the things you need to do better that winning doesn't always do. Was it just a case of just going, we need to get this better, we need to get that better, we need to get that better, and then eventually the wheel would turn?
Yeah, well, that was definitely the thought process. There was a couple of key areas that we were clearly lacking in, like just they were sticking out like a sore thumb. So we dedicated a lot more time, and then made a couple of changes there as well. And realistically as well, personnel wise, we're a little bit down on personnel at the start of the year. We had to put a lot of young guys, I think, in the pack, which contributed to the set piece problems. There might have been like 7 debutants out of 8 sort of thing, which really hurts you. And I had a really good chat to Billy Melrose once, obviously, long-term coach, and there's just no substitute for quality players as well. When you get, guys that have played regular first grade back, it does help you. So it was a little bit like, I got to take some of the heat, because we probably should have trained better in the off season. 2, we didn't execute, and 3, quality of players.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I remember DC saying at something. It might have been the Narrabeen torture camp that we went to. That you can't win, even if you're the world's best coach. If you don't have good players, it's very difficult to win.
Yeah. Well, I think DC said that at a level 4. I think
That's the torture camp I was
Oh,
referring to.
We won't go into that yet. No, toe the company line here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, mate. Yeah, that actually really resonated with me, what DC said, because obviously DC's been known as, in certainly Shute Shield level, as a really good recruiter. And that's sort of translated into his success. But, look at all the good teams. The teams that have won the comp, they've had good players, haven't they?
Yeah.
If you go through the last few years, probably Sydney Uni maybe a little bit different. That's just a machine, just keep it on turning over. But, good teams of, that North team was really good in 16. That Warringah team was really good in 17. That Uni team that won 2 in a row, they were really good with those Potters and Porters and players like that. So there's no doubt that good players win more games, don't they? Or help you win more games.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and they make you look like a better coach too, just quietly.
Oh, mate, it's funny on that. Me and obviously my co-coach, good mate of yours, Jed Gillespie, we were just talking last night, and we've had Tane Edmund back recently, and I reckon my coaching's dropped 50%. It's absolute heaven. I don't really return home with a headache and all that. He takes over, and we got an experienced Englishman in Charlie Beckett, and he's in the second row for us. And Jed said the same thing to me. It's great having some experience because they sort of take on a role and they sort of help you out and lets you focus on actually coaching rather than just absolutely everything.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I've found, like, I haven't been coaching as long as you, but I've found very different coaching guys who are already at a good level, because you just have to kind of steer them in the right direction and then hold them accountable, versus teaching complete beginners how to do the things that they've known how to do for 10 years. Like, because at the Wildfires, I'm doing first grade men's forwards, but I'm also doing the Colts and the girls. And I'm really enjoying it, but it's a very interesting to see the difference in the beginner versus the guys who are at this level.
Yeah, and I actually reckon that would be really challenging personally for me. Luckily, I do first grade only. I'll touch base with lower grades, but mainly first grade. But you can just see, I know what you're talking about when a young kid comes up and say he hasn't been through like a really good school system, hasn't been in an academy or anything, like, they're just so raw. So you can see the talent, but you literally have to teach them everything. You got to teach them, say, 10 things, where a kid, let's say it's come through the academy, you got to teach him maybe 7 or 8. A kid that has had no sort of experience, but just you can see something about him, you got to teach, so many things, like, 12, 15.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've also found something difficult is when you've got the guys who are basically super rugby players and you bring like a young guy from Colts into grade, from a scrum or a line-out point of view, you spend all your time, or you should spend all your time, on the young guy, getting them up to standard. But then the other guys don't get the attention that they need and deserve. And in reality, they're the ones that you get judged on. So I've found that balance very challenging as well. Is that something you've experienced?
Yep, I can give you a really good example of that. Chris Bell's been sort of 10, 15 for the last couple of years, 27 years old, pretty much knows what he's doing, so reasonably experienced player. But I reckon, and I had to talk to him in the offseason, I reckon I've really neglected him over the last 2 or 3 years. Of course, he didn't need as much help as the other guys. I sort of just let him flow through, and I didn't think his game had evolved that much because I hadn't coached him much. He was still doing what he did when he first came to me in 2020. So it was actually a work on for me this year, is to make sure I give my top guys, or the guys that don't need as, in theory, don't need as much coaching, make sure they get at least some love as well, and just trying to refine and make them become better players as well, because you can get stuck in making the one that needs a lot of progress, giving him all your time, and you neglect the guys that, probably ultimately win you more football games, don't they?
And they're the ones that we get judged on, really. Yeah. Like, as much as you want to help the young guy of coming from Colts into grade, it's really the first grade guys that who we get, judged, criticised, praised on.
Yeah, no, totally agree, mate. So it is important to, and obviously it's one of the challenges of coaching, isn't it? You can't give 100% love to 15 players, so you got to work out how you spread it around.
How do you give guys feedback? Is that a weekly thing for you? Will you send them clips? Do you sit down with guys? What's your sort of process there?
Yeah, we do it on, so they get sort of post the game, they get a little questionnaire where they do, 2 things they did well, as part of their, medical screening as well. But at the end, there's like 2 things you did well, 2 things you need to work on. I generally go more towards the backs and do that stuff, and leave Jed to the forwards. And we sort of go through the game. There's two things you do well in the game. Sorry, two things you need to work on. And then some of the boys, they like going through, they like going through the whole game, which is very time consuming. Michael Isley, if you're listening. But you can fit in a few where you do, full game review. You fit in a few where you do clips. Other guys just like chatting via WhatsApp. Other guys like a phone call. So it's about working out what each individual wants.
Yeah, so tailoring the feedback to get the most out of the individual. So with James Whalen, you'd have to hit him with a brick over the head for him to take in any information.
Whale's actually pretty good in terms of the feedback. He's gotten better certainly since we got him 2 years ago. Doesn't always take it on board, but he's certainly more malleable than probably what you had him as a very young buck, as a 20-year-old coming through when you were the experienced guru at South.
I love Whaler. He's a good mate of mine. But the first sort of scrum session, he's in grade. He's gone up to me and gone, "Oh, hey, champ." So he champed me. I've never forgotten that. Hey, how are you keeping morale high during the tough part of the season? It's getting cold. Injuries are starting to happen. Guys are sore. It's getting tough. Have you noticed some of the morale go down a little bit? Is there anything that you do as a coach to keep everyone up?
I reckon I had this problem big time last year. And I also did some surveys post-season. A lot of the boys said they were really low during the middle of the period. So I was sort of conscious of that this year. Hold on, as I can open the door for my stupid bulldog. It's barking away. I was really conscious of that this year. So what I did is we did less training at the front end of the year. So traditionally last year we did Monday, Tuesday, Thursday from sort of round one. This year we only did Mondays probably 2 or 3 times in the first 10-round block. And now we'll probably try to ramp it up. So I've sort of, in theory, I've tried to, keep them reasonably not too much rugby in the first block. And then the second block, especially as the quality of the comp comes up and you get an influx we get a few players back. So we probably need that third night as well. But it was also mainly just for the mental sort of freshness side of it. Or I thought, when I first got into coach, I thought 3 nights a week, you have to do it. Now I'm not so sure. I've prepared for that. Hopefully they're a little bit more fresher for this tough bucks. It is tough now, cold and wet, like you said.
That's interesting. I've heard every different theory. I've seen teams train twice a week. I've seen guys move their training to Wednesday, Thursday, and then a captain's run Friday. We do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I guess there's no real right answer. It probably just depends on your group and how long you've had them together and some of the ages of the guys who are doing it. Is that what you've seen? Has it been working for you guys? Obviously, it has been. You've been winning.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, the proof will be in the pudding at the end of the year, ultimately, won't it? Like at the moment, we're sort of doing all right. If we come at the back end of the year, I'm a genius. If we fall off the cliff, we haven't trained enough. So it'll sort of be hard to work out. At the moment, just my gut feeling says it was the right decision. Just because the boys just look a little bit fresher. And again, it was a little bit unique to Eastwood as well. A lot of our guys, it takes an hour to get to Eastwood because we're sort of splattered all around Sydney. Peak hour traffic in Sydney, what a beauty it is. Sometimes on that Monday, 45 minutes for an hour for video and some work on just isn't worth the 2-hour round trip for the players. Yeah. So that's what it was sort of born out of for us. It was just the fact that guys don't live nearby. Might be different at a club like, say, Manly or Warringah, where everyone's maybe 10 or 15 minutes away. Well, I don't know what the wildfire situation is, but then it's not as big a burden. But, to take 2 hours out of someone's day with a family, we've got a few older players as well. I think like you guys at the Wildfires, which makes us a little bit unique, taking time away from the wife and the kids and all that. It all sort of adds up. So it's about getting that work-life balance right. But I reckon as soon as I got into coaching, we were still 2 a week at Eastwood, and I was adamant you have to go to 3. Yeah. That's changed within 4 years.
Mate, what keeps you going when it gets tough? You're a businessman, smart man, talented. What keeps you going? Why are you doing this?
Mate, I love chasing success. That's what gets me going. I'm a competitive person. So when it's, cold and wet, I just know we have to get this done in order to sort of win the game. It's easy for me to say as a coach as well with my, 10 layers of clothing on and all that in the rain. But that's it. That's what gets me going, mate. I just know in order to be successful, you got to work hard. And, it's not always perfect either, is it? So you got to understand that there's going to be ebbs and flows throughout a season. There's going to be ebbs and flows in your business. So you can't just take all the good stuff. That's sort of, I really don't like sort of, the term, flat track bully. So you're really up when it's good and you're going.
Yeah.
Or I reckon the people that are most successful, that sort of rise up when you're up against a bit of adversity. So I try to, when it's a tougher time, I try to bring the group more energy, or I try to work a little bit harder, sort of thing, because I want to help the boys get up, and I just don't want to fail as well.
Have you always had that, or is that something you've sort of cultivated over the last sort of 5 years?
Mate, I certainly did. I certainly didn't have. I reckon, mate, I turned the corner when I was about 26 years old. I can remember it vividly because I'd been in 2 professional programs. I was just getting cut from. Actually, no, I wasn't about. I was halfway through my Waratahs first in, and Chris Hickey, who was a coach of mine all the way through Eastwood, just brought me in and said, mate, you've wasted your talent. You don't work hard enough, and this kind of thing. And this was coming from a friend and mentor sort of thing. So he gave me it right between the eyes, and I'm like, and it really hurt me, but it was really good for me as well. So it was probably from then on. It was in 2009. I remember it vividly. Yeah. And from then on, mate, I just tried to work as hard as possible, whether I was a player, whether it was in my business or whatever it was. Whatever I was trying to succeed in, I wanted to go at it 100%. But it took me a while to learn it.
What is it like? Had anyone up to that point tried to have that conversation with you, or was it because it was someone that you respect so much, like Chris, who you have that relationship with, who just sat you down and was really honest with you, that it actually got through? Or was that something that no one had ever spoken to you about before? Were you aware of it?
No, I don't think I was really aware of it. To be perfectly honest, I sort of just going through, and I thought I was reasonably successful. Played in a couple of grand finals, been at the Brumbies, played NPC. So I thought I was doing all right. But in reality, I wasn't. Like, looking back now, I was only lucky to be doing 50 to 60% of what I needed to be to sort of reach my potential. So, and I wish someone had told me that early. Like, I wish someone had told me that when I was like 20. But then if I was 20, I don't know if I would have been ready to hear it. I would have just sort of passed on, yeah, sure, mate, sort of thing. So, yeah, I don't really know what the answer is. It does help, though, coming from someone that you have respect for and you've got a relationship with. If it's just, some coach you've known for 6 weeks or something, I don't know if it wouldn't have worked. I'm like, mate, you don't know me. You don't know how hard I work or something. So, it was probably good timing from Chris, and, he was an experienced coach by that stage, so he knew when to pull the trigger on me.
I want to ask about Chris, because he's a bit of a legend in rugby circles. But in terms of taking that hard conversation that he had with you, which has clearly benefited the next part of your life, how do you go about having hard conversations with players? And how are you finding, I want to be a bit general because I know some of the guys will listen, but like, how are you finding this generation? Are they open to those hard conversations? Yeah. How are you finding that?
Yeah, look, I always, when I've got to have one of those conversations, or if a player's getting, dropped or something, which is another hard conversation, I always just go back to just be 100% honest with them, and, do what's best for the team and the player. So when you're having a hard conversation about someone who's not, doing enough work and maybe not living up to potential, like, I've only got his best interest at heart. Yeah. So, I'm doing a good thing. It's a hard conversation, but I'm actually doing a good thing for him. And then you can't, you might sugarcoat it a little bit, but you've got to be 100% honest with them, because otherwise it'll come back and bite you in the ass. But you said, this or that. So I think if you're just 100% honest with them, you got their best interest at heart, and you're doing the best thing for the team. That's how I say it. That's what I say in my head as I have those hard conversations. This is best for the team. This is best for the individual. It's actually going to help them. So, in terms of the generational stuff, mate, I still think individuals are individuals. So some guys will take it really good and they just come up to me and go, yeah, mate, Batch, you're right. I haven't been. Other guys will just say, no, you're totally wrong, and, kick up a stink. So it's, I don't know if it's so much generational. If you asked the coach from 20 years ago, that they would have had the same thing. This guy took it well, this guy didn't take it well. So, that's where I stand on that.
That's totally fair comment, and probably pretty accurate, I'd imagine. Like, I didn't realize how lazy I was until the last year of my career, and I wouldn't have listened probably to that feedback right up until the end, which is 15 years too late.
Yeah.
How do you those guys that don't take the feedback well, how do you just let them sit with it, or do you how do you stop them from being a problem with the group? Do you
Yeah.
not even think, or do you not even think about that?
No, you do think about it because some guys obviously, they can take it poorly, and they can be really sort of, sulky around training, and that sort of affects the playing group. So then I think you sort of, you actually have to talk to them again, sort of thing, and say, look, I've noticed you reacted this way. Why have you reacted this way? Try to get to the bottom of it, how they're feeling and all that. And then eventually, sometimes, mate, you just got to tell them that, you can't play here unless you're going to improve your attitude. And that's obviously the hardest conversation you can possibly have with a player that, essentially telling him you're not wanted. But you sort of, I guess, for me, it'd be sort of saying, look, mate, if you don't improve this, we can't have you around the first grade group because you're actually bringing everyone else down. So you've got a choice here. It's up to you. So, which can be horrible as a coach because you're thinking, God, if he walks out on me, I'm now down to only one tight head prop or something, and it's going to, screw up my entire squad. But mate, you can't have a player who's a sort of cancer in the team because it's just going to, it'll infect one, then it'll infect two, then it'll infect 3, 4. So you can't let that happen.
How do you work? Actually, let's talk about Chris Hickey. Obviously, a mentor of yours. We've just gone through the level 4 course. I've been connected with Matt Williams, who's been fantastic. Obviously, Chris Hickey's a great mentor of yours. Do you think having a mentor is a valuable thing for young coaches or even older coaches? And what are some things that you've picked up from Chris along the way?
Well, firstly, Chris definitely is a mentor. Like he was the one that brought me into first grade, kept in touch with me throughout all my travels as a footy player. When I got into coaching and everything. So Chris has been really good to me. And we still touch base every couple of weeks. He'll send me notes on the team. I can call him anytime if I'm having problems about anything. So Chris Hickey's really good. And mate, it's just little conversations where you just pick up little things. So, sometimes you probably find a lot of the times actually guys just sort of reaffirm that you're on the right track, which is actually also really nice. It's nice to know that, an experienced coach like him thinks you're doing the right thing. So one, that's really nice. And just, mate, it'll be just only, it's never reinventing the wheel when he offers me advice, but there's just one or two things where I go, oh yeah, well, I actually could use that. So I don't know, and it's just nice to get that. I like the affirmation part of it. I don't know if that's an ego thing. But also, mate, I'm always looking to get better. And why wouldn't I go to a guy with 20 years experience in coaching? So if I can, an hour's worth of conversation for 2 little tidbits of gold is 100% worth it to me.
That's the whole reason I do this podcast. I originally started as like a business thing, which is the dumbest thing ever, and then realized how much I could learn from it. And it's honestly talking to smart people. You might just pick up one thing about how they approach something or the way they think about something, but it's incredibly valuable, I think.
Yeah, mate, I agree. And mate, obviously I'm on the podcast, but I do want to tell you, I listen to the podcast as well for that exact same reason. And then when I hear something good, I'll just write it down in my phone and put it in my notes. I got this big notes section with little ideas that I pick up from different people, mate. I'll read newspaper articles on coaching. I'm like, oh, that's a nice one. Or see a good quote, take a photo of that, scrolling through Instagram on those I follow different, coaching ones and stuff like that. Like, you just always got to be trying to pick up information to help yourself and try to get better.
Do you do any formal personal development? Like, will you go and spend a week somewhere at the end of the year, or is it more just informal, kind of like I do, where you're just always open to new ideas and talking to smart people?
Yeah, well, I reckon I'm probably more on the informal side like you. Like I sort of, last year I was really lucky. My brother's mate is an S&C at the Seattle Seahawks in the NFL. So went over there, talked to him and saw a few things about their training and all that. So that was really awesome. But that was, also tied in with a very fun trip to the US. So, a little bit of A, a little bit of B there. And just like, I guess, I'm like you. I pick up little tidbits, write it down. I like reading as well. So I like those books and I take notes or I dog tag the years of books and stuff like that. But I don't essentially go, I'm going to do 2 weeks of professional development or something like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to work on my communication, or I'm going to work on an understanding of kick return strategy, or I'm going to learn more about forward play, and you sort of have it formally written down and you go and You don't think? I don't think like that. Do you
No,
think like
honestly,
that?
I don't think like that either. But sometimes I feel like I should think like that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, like a great coach like Eddie Jones, he probably does that, doesn't he? He probably goes, I'm going to work on my, presentation skills, and then goes, speaks to, actors or whatever, everything under the sun. So maybe that's an area I can get better, but certainly my personality type's more like yours, where I want to sort of learn on the run, and I want to constantly be going. I'm not as formal in my preparation on personal development.
One of the best things about doing this podcast is it's totally reframed my thinking on failure. Like I used to be very afraid of making mistakes. And it was actually a conversation with Wayne Smith that totally flipped my thinking on that. You have to make mistakes. It's part of the learning process. What's your relationship like with, for a lack of a better word, failure, making mistakes? Do you think it's important? And can you share any mistakes that you can recall that you've made that have turned you into a better coach?
Yep, definitely I can. My relationship with failure is like, at first I do take it really poorly. I'm still a poor, not a poor sport, but I want to win. I'm competitive. So at first I'm really filthy. And then it's funny because I tell my players that when they have a poor game, you can tell when a player's had a poor game. I always send them the message, yeah, not your best game. You got 24 hours to cry about it. And then we're on to how to improve you. So I try to do that with my own sort of coaching with the team. I got 24 hours to sort of whinge and cry about it. And then there's no more whinging after that. It's just straight to the job sort of thing. So, well, I take it bad at first, but then I've got to look for the silver lining. So when I go through my video, it's probably a bad thing, but I'll analyze our games that we lose a hell of a lot more than the ones we win sort of thing, and just try to pick up everything. I've got to be better and not over-analyzing and sort of doing too much about it, because like I said earlier, a loss is never as bad as it actually seems at the time. So that's how I do it in terms of, and actually it was funny when Chris Hickey actually gave some good advice. Like, I think after we lose a couple of games early on in my coaching, I used to rant and rave a little bit. But Chris told me that that's more about me getting out my emotions. It's actually a little bit selfish. So nowadays, if they lose, it's sort of restrained anger rather than the blood and thunder that it used to be, sort of thing. And I thought it was a really good point, because it does, at the time, it doesn't really help them that much at full time, coming off and blasting them when they know they've played bad or they know they've just lost. So that was just a conversation, and from now on I tend not to do that unless it's something really alarming about effort areas or something. So I got that from him. In terms of failures, I know 2019 we had a really good team. We just knocked off a very star-studded East in a quarterfinal at TG. Then we were playing the Rats at North Sydney Oval to get into the grand final, and I didn't change the game plan at all. I thought, beautiful, we just towed up East. I'll just stick to everything, and I literally didn't change anything during the week, and I regretted that for 4 years. And it was a really good coaching lesson for me, that you've always got to be evolving. I think it was Simon Cron, he says something about, 7 days is a long time in rugby or something. There's some quote about that. And yeah, it couldn't ring more true to me there now. So now I'll never make that mistake again, in terms of, you got to throw something a little. I just thought, what worked there will work. And it didn't, and we lost. Also learned that year, that was my first real year head coaching, that I ran all my forwards into the ground, all my props. So from now on, I try really not to play my props for 80 minutes for 12 weeks in a row, because I know the wear and tear. Obviously, you as an ex-prop will know this more than anyone, but the wear, I just didn't know. I just thought, oh, cool, they'll just keep going. But it made 800 kilos through your neck,
It's
20,
terrible.
20 times a game for 12 games in a row. No one can survive that. In that semi-final, I lost my captain, my tight end, Rob Lagudi, in the first 10 minutes and screwed the whole game just because I didn't manage him. It was a load management issue sort of thing. So definitely learned those ones. That's the big one that always sticks out to me in terms of failure, because I have that loss really on me. Like, I really take that one to heart, and I sort of see it as my sort of fault.
The evolve or die saying is very true, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can't keep doing the same thing. Like the famous story about how Blockbuster got offered to buy Netflix really early on. They go, oh, that'll never last. And now there's only one Blockbuster left in the world. Or that similar with BlackBerry. No one has a BlackBerry anymore. It's all iPhone because they didn't want to evolve. And I think that's very true in rugby circles as well. You got to evolve your tactics. You got to change. People work you out very quickly. Even at our level, there's all the stats are there, all the videos there. You can't hide. People know what you're doing. So you've got to evolve.
Yeah, mate.
I
Yeah.
think.
No, mate, I totally agree with you. And it's not, you don't need massive changes as well. I think that's where some people maybe go wrong. We're going to change our style. Teams have worked this out. No, it's just, changing a few little different pitches so that maybe the opposition starts second guessing them as well. So, but I'm a little bit like most people. When you first hear change, you're a little, I know me personally, like, oh, change. Oh, I'm not sure about that. So I've learned to be certainly more open to it. But at first it is a bit of a shock for me when I hear, we're going to do something different. Oh, I don't know about that. That's my first reaction, honestly. I don't know about that. And then I think it through. Yep, it is the right idea.
Do you review games straight after the games, or do you let it sit for a day?
Mate, I'm horrific. So my Saturday is I get home. I always have a Pepsi Max when I get home from a game. I love a Pepsi. I'm not a huge drinker, so I find Pepsi Max with a lot of ice is my thirst quencher. I'll then order some Uber Eats. So Saturday night's a treat meal. And then I'll dive into my video for 4 or 5 hours. I'll go to bed about 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. I can't sleep because I'm thinking about the game still. I get up at 7 or 8 a.m. and then I'll go back into it. So maybe not the best habit to get into, but it's one I can't help.
It's interesting. Like, I know Jed does the same thing. I need to remove the emotion from it so that I can look at it analytically rather than going, fuck, why did they do that? They fucked that up.
Yeah.
Rather than doing that. But that's just how I work. But I know a lot of guys will do it the night after the game. Is it, how long do you spend on it during a week? Is it actually, what's your week like in general? Because I've been at 2 clubs now coaching. I've seen some of the behind the scenes of what goes into being a Shute Shield head coach. It's a tough job. What's an average week like for you?
Average week. So I guess let's work from game day. Like Saturday's your big day. You get there at 12. And like I said, I'll probably stop rugby at 12 at night. So that's a big day. Sunday or I have is a really big day. I think Sunday's important to have a big day at our level because all the boys are free. Like they're not at work. They're not at uni. So you've got to get all your review done. Our rule is on Sunday night. So Sunday's a big day. I try to knock off at about like 3 or 4 on a Sunday. So I get a bit of bend time, whatever you want to call it, downtime from rugby. So, and then Monday morning, I sort of do my gym work and then I'm back on. So let's say it's sort of more like a half day on Monday. You got to watch all your film of the next week's game. So you watch, 2 or 3 games of the one. You go in on a Monday, we train. So I'll be in there at about 4 o'clock, 4 till say 8. Tuesday, you're prepping for sort of that training one. So let's call that more of a sort of like a half day. Again, you're making sure you're making all those tough phone calls in the morning. Then you're getting there in the afternoon, sort of, again, 4 to your bigger training session, 8:30, 9 at night. Wednesday morning, you're going through, it's probably like admin day. Like, so, our guys have asked from, different things throughout the grade. The club's asked for different things there. So, but that's really only sort of a couple of hours. I try to stay away from the club on a Wednesday. I've got another business as well. I own a gym. So that's where I sort of do my gym stuff for half a day. And then Thursday, that's certainly a lighter training run, just putting the finishing touches. So call that half a day. And then Friday is Friday's pretty rugby free. I just communicate with a few of the boys, like guys that I think need a message on game day or something, that they get some messages and we talk a little bit about that sort of thing. But mate, first grade coach, it's so much admin. Like you're looking for a player for a house. It's just things always come up. So you're not necessarily like sitting at a desk per se, running through film. It's not as much coaching as you want. It's just like, okay, this guy needs this player's complaining. You got to sort out this. There seems to be like fires everywhere, which you're just sort of putting out these little, they're not big ones either, but they're just enough ones to sort of take 40 minutes here, half an hour there, 20 minutes there. They're the ones that, and it's sort of, you feel like it's not really contributing to your on-field success as well. So they're the frustrating ones. And I reckon that probably adds up to 6 to 8 hours a week doing those sort of tasks, which is, mate, just the life of the coach, I guess.
I reckon there'd be quite a few Shute Shield coaches listening, just nodding their head going, I'm glad he has to go through that as well.
Well, I've talked to a few of them after games and all that, and then you talk about your frustrations and all that. So, it's certainly not unique to Eastwood or me and all that. It's just, I guess it's just the nature of the business, the nature of Shute Shield, that semi-professional level. It's just, you're getting things at different hours. You're getting a phone call at 11 p.m. You're getting a phone call at 6 a.m. Whereas in a professional environment, they're in there all the time, aren't they? So it's whatever, 8 till 3, whatever they train nowadays.
How have you seen the Shute Shield evolve over your time?
Yeah, it's a funny one that, and you never want to say like you don't want to be like one of those old people say it was like better in your time or anything like that. So it's interesting. I think that the coverage and the support is better than ever now. So if that makes sense, like people are more behind it. But I think it's virtually become an under 23s or under 25s competition now, and I reckon that hurts the quality a little bit of it. When I was coming through, there wasn't too many guys over 22 years of age. I reckon there would have been like 3 in your team. The rest of them were sort of experienced footballers that have done 10 years of football. So I don't know why it's evolved.
Yeah, what do you think that's changed? What flip? Because I've had the same experience. People always ask me, what do you think the comps? How do you think the comps evolved? And I would argue that when we were playing, they were probably better players because all the Super Rugby teams would send their guys back every week, and they wouldn't warehouse their guys. So I'd be scrumming against Kieran Longbottom or Matt Dunning or Ben Robinson, and it was every single week, and nearly every club had someone. But I would argue now that the coaching's gone through the roof, the detail has gone through the roof, the coverage and support has gone through the roof. And I think it's more exciting than it was, but I don't think it's as good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it does, man. I think it's because, like, guys, if they don't make it at 24, 25, they just stop playing now. Whereas before, guys used to play till, I played till I was 31. That was in 2015. You'd be lucky to find 10, 30, over 30-year-olds in the competition at the moment. I think both our clubs has probably got the most.
Yeah, they're all playing for the Wildfires.
Yeah, I got a couple as well, but which I think is a bit of a shame because that's a good place to learn, isn't it, off those experienced players? So, and it's got down. I think a lot of it comes down to the Super Rugby sides. They're picking 20 and 21-year-olds now, aren't they? So if you are 25 and aspirational, you go, geez, my time's probably done. So what's the point of playing unless I really, really love the game? So
do you think there's more options now as well, like with Major League and Japan and the coverage that we're getting? It seems like I've spoke to a Major League coach who looks at the Shute Shield as their main recruiting ground because it just lines up better with their season as opposed to New Zealand. Like, is that something that you think plays a part as well?
Yeah, it definitely does. Like certainly when I was coming through, there was only 3 Super Rugby teams. So automatically, 2 extra teams is going to dilute talent. And you're right, there's more options. The MLR, there must be like 30 or 40 guys from Shute Shield and MLR at the moment.
Easily.
So yeah, so that's a huge player talent. And you got young kids now. We just lost a young lock who's 20 years old. He's off to Japan. So
20 years old.
Yeah, 20 years old, totally unproven, but gets to go to Japan and obviously earn some good coin and whatever, be a professional footballer. So, hard to say no, come to Eastwood for, a couple of $100 a week and a meat pie when he's getting offered big stuff like that. So, yeah, it's a combination of all those things. But, for me, I've always been a big proponent. I don't like selecting kids really young into these super squads. I think it's detrimental to their development. It's arguable that you've seen that all the way through to Wallaby level, and a Super Rugby franchise is not, going that well as well. So yeah, I think there's a number of factors. It's still a very good quality comp. Don't get me wrong, and I'm not saying it was a lot better in my day, but I liked the fact that there was more experienced people over there. I think there's no replace for rugby games, and I don't think young players are getting enough rugby games in them at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I remember talking to Jed before you guys played uni, maybe last year, and we talked about maul defense strategy for about half an hour. Just a fascinating conversation, Ben.
Love it.
You would have loved to have been there, but that just never would have happened when I was playing. So I think the detail and the coverage has improved, and there's still some very good players, but I think it's becoming a little bit thinner.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's funny because when I was coming through, like I don't remember, I think we used to have the old that might be showing my age, but the VCR, and we literally video review, fast forward rewind on 2 or 3 plays, and that was it. And nowadays, you got your huddles and all that, where you're getting 100 clips a week setting through. So the professionalism has gone up. So yeah, it's a funny one,
man. As you look back on your time at Eastwood, can you pin down what has made Eastwood a successful club? Clearly, you've been a top 4 team for as long as I can remember, certainly top 6. Plenty of Wallabies, plenty of great players gone through the club. Is there something that you can reflect on or some insight that you can give on why that's been the case?
Oh, look, everyone always throws out the word culture, won't they, when they have successful teams? And a lot of people ask me, what is the Eastwood culture? And I don't really 100% know, to be perfectly honest. Most of the time, I'll give them the answer that, it's traditionally quite a hard working, because we actually don't have a lot of resources and all that. So people are generally fairly humble and hardworking, which I think is an important one. But when I look back on it as well, mate, it's the continuity of the place in terms of, like, Chris Hickey was there for 6 or 7 years. Then John Manenti was there for, I think 5 or 6 years. Now I've been here for sort of 5 years. Like, that creates a really stable environment. And a lot of other clubs haven't had that. So having that stable environment, I think, has been really important. The board's been fairly the same all through the years. We haven't had any, you hear of, coups at other clubs and stuff like that. We've never really had any of that. So you've had a stable coaching group, stable board, stable GM and stuff like that. That really gives you a nice, well-rounded club. And then in terms of the actual boys, like, mate, I've been there 20 years, and I could count the number of dickheads on one hand, and
just Waylo, basically.
Well,
No, but yeah, 100% agree with you, mate. I've had many friends from Eastwood over the years, and there is not one dickhead amongst them. I've known a lot of the guys, and I've been playing Shute Shield 15, 16 years.
Yeah, but it's not like we actively say that, because the Sydney Swans always tout that thing, we don't sign dickheads, all that. It's not like we've said that or anything like that. It's just, I don't know if it's just the way it's been, or, if one comes in, they get weeded out pretty quick. Yeah. Like, so the boys are, they just don't want any of that. It goes back to being, they're very humble guys. So if someone comes in, like, sort of tooting his horn or too much or something, like, he gets humbled pretty quick himself, and he quickly finds out that's not the environment. I can probably, obviously I won't name names, but I can think of a few guys that have come through with that attitude, and mate, they come and go really quick. But I think what I always tell when I'm sort of recruiting players is about the culture of Eastwood is just look around at the other Shute Shield clubs, how many ex-Eastwood players are at other Shute Shield clubs, and mate, there is not very many at all. So most guys that come there enjoy it. So it's that stable environment. And I think it's that enjoyment factor as well. There's generally good people around to sort of hang out with.
What, mate? I had a different question I was going to ask you. This is probably going to pump your tires a little bit. What are you world class at? I had someone ask me that the other day, and I found it a very confronting question, because I don't like talking positively about myself, but it's an interesting question because we're all really good at something. What are you world class at?
Mate, honestly, mate, I'm not world class at anything. Like, well, what? Like, well, I can't think of any facet where I can go that I'm so much better than anyone else, or even if I'm like so much better than any of the other Shute Shield coaches. So I don't think I'm world class at anything in particular. I think I'm reasonably good at some things, or like I like to think. It's a small little detail, but I like to think I read body language pretty good. And I can tell when a person's down or when a player's up, sort of thing, and that can affect selection or what you say to them and that kind of thing. So I'd say that's one of my biggest strengths. But I certainly wouldn't say, there's millions of people in the world that are better than me at it. So I don't know, it's not till you become, the best in the world, an elite coach at winning a World Cup where you can truly say that you're world class at something. So, mate, I'm just constantly looking to get better, realizing that I'm nowhere near the finished product as a coach.
What do you have to get better at?
For me, mate, many things to start with. But probably the most important one. At first, I was really bad at I'm getting better at it, but really bad at other people's ideas. I thought I sort of had most of the answers on things. So nowadays I'm far more open to others. At first, I'll still go, oh, wait, that's different to what I was thinking. But then I've got to process it and slow it down and work out, actually, that might work. Yeah. So that's one. I've got to be better with my staff as well as a head coach. So what I'm really bad at is I think people have got the same mindset as me. Like, I just want to do everything possible to win or make the players better and all that. But some people just don't have the time or different types of energy and all that kind of thing. So I've got to learn to treat my staff the way they are, not the way I want them to be, if that makes sense in terms of their personality. And I got to give them clear. I'm not very good at giving clear direction. I got to get better at my in training plans, giving them a real clear directive, because I can get really frustrated if we do a drill and it wastes 10 minutes. Like it'll drive me insane. Then I go back and say, have I given them really clear guidelines on what I wanted out of that? So they're two things that I reckon I've got to get really better at.
How have you had much criticism since you've started coaching?
Not to my face, but I'm sure there's I'm sure there's plenty out there. And when we've lost games, there'll be fans to say, you kick it too much or something, or you haven't been doing something like this. But mate, everyone's got an opinion. So I'm one of those people that if you get criticized, unless it's from someone I care about, it sort of doesn't really bother me. And if you ever want to make it as a coach, and I certainly do, is mate, you got to get used to it, don't you? You're gonna every time you lose, you're gonna get Freddie Fiddler at the moment's copping it from all angles. Okay, so and you're gonna get fired and all that kind of stuff. So I think in my head, I've got it. I'm ready for it, but I don't know if you can truly be ready for a bombardment of you can't coach, shit, coach, whatever kind of thing.
It's funny. I was telling one of our players during the week, you're a genius coach one week, you're an idiot the next week. And that's just what you got to live with.
Mate, I literally had that the last 2 weeks. We got absolutely hammered by Sydney Uni and we played so bad. And you hear different things or you see different things. And they didn't even look like they were coached. And then a week later, oh, geez, they were brilliantly coached against the Waratahs. Like, Jesus, in 1 week, I've gone from the worst coach to the best coach. So you got to take it all with a pinch of salt, don't you?
Mate, how important are your support staff at Eastwood? Can we talk about them a little bit? Obviously, I love giving Jed a hard time, but let's give him a little bit of a plug. How important are they to you? How important are they to the success of what you guys are doing?
Mate, super important. The first ones I'll give really credit to is sort of the volunteer staff that aren't on the coaching staff.
They're massive at every club. Absolutely massive. Amazing.
Yeah, I don't know technically what their role is, manager, gear shield, or whatever, but there's a guy at Eastwood called Horry. He's been there for 20 years, and mate, the place simply wouldn't function without him. If there's any little problem, he'll fix. The players like him. He offers a little bit of humour, which is a little nice point of difference from all the seriousness of rugby. So those volunteers are so important. Even our first grade manager, Johnny Cropper, he can be annoying, but geez, I don't have to worry about anything like Fuse Sports or something like that. He just takes it totally off me. So I can just focus on the rugby side of things. So I think those guys are super, super important. And mate, the assistant coach is obviously, obviously Jed's got set piece. You can't win a football game without set piece. It's as simple as that. So if he doesn't do his job, we don't win football games, and he does his job really good, and gives me, a sort of, we're actually pretty similar, but gives me a different point of view on certain things. As you know, he's not afraid to speak his mind. So, some of it goes in one ear, out the other. Others you go, geez, that's a good nugget of gold, Jed. I'll take that and use it as myself and pass it on. Because he's a smart guy. And, the defense coach here, Steve Tyneman. So he's an ex-Wallaby. We deliberately got him in. He's an older head. So, I don't know. I'm throw him on the bus. Let's say he's older, and he's a really calming presence. So sometimes in the coaching box, I'm a little bit extravagant, but he'll just sort of, I'll look at him and he's so calm, like, well, fuck, what am I acting like a pork chop when this bloke is, coached the Waratahs forwards, he's just sitting there calmly. So they all got a unique role, mate, and they all make my job a hell of a lot easier. And they're all contributing to helping us be a successful team and the individuals be successful, mate. So couldn't do it without them.
I, as another assistant coach in the Shute Shield, I can only say how tough a job it is if you're doing it well, or if you're putting the effort into it that you should be putting into it. It's a very tough job, and I'm basically giving myself a pat on the back there as well.
Oh, mate, it takes a lot of time up, doesn't it? Because obviously you're not getting paid for it as a living, and your weekends are gone, your night times are gone 3 times a week, like. At least I get a bit of coin for it. Like the assistant coaches get hardly anything. So, I reckon it is one of the harder job sort of thing, but it's one of those ones where, you sort of, I'm sure you probably got in your head, you're sort of biding your time, hoping for an opportunity at some stage sort of thing, but it's bloody hard and it's time consuming.
Look, it is, but equally it's rewarding, particularly when you've been going reasonably well. It's very rewarding. And I personally like working with a motivated group of good people who are all on the same path. Like I really love that. So it's not a chore to me, if that makes sense.
Nah, I guess that's what the good coaches are, mate, aren't they? Like they see it as less of a sort of a job and a chore, and more just something I'm going to do regardless whether I get paid or whatever. It's just I'm the same as you, mate. Working towards a goal with a group of good blokes is something that really sort of I enjoy.
Mate, Matt Williams had this great quote that he said to us. He goes, "Rugby is easy, people are hard." And I couldn't agree with that more. I really like, as we just discussed, I really like working with good people. I find difficult people very hard to sort of wrap my head around. What have you done? What have you learned about building relationships with your players? Is that something that came naturally to you, like you're a people person, or is it something that you've had to develop those skills over your coaching career?
I reckon naturally I'm a bit of a people's person. Like I don't want to talk and all that kind of thing. So I reckon naturally I was sort of okay with it. But as I got into coaching, I started to learn more and more the importance of it. And it's really funny the guys you work more like I can look at my team now and I can go, the guys that I've worked closer with and have a closer relationship, they're my better players. It's really that simple sort of thing. So it sort of shows me that if I dedicate the time and the effort to someone, one, I get a kick when they improve, and two, they sort of repay me every sort of Saturday as well, sort of thing. So the challenge for me is to make sure that I give as much love as to someone who I don't connect with as well straight off the bat. Like some players, you straight away, you sort of fall in love with them. You want to help them with everything sort of thing. But other guys that can be a little bit more challenging, got it might take 6 months of conversations. And he finally lets out, these are his problems and this is how he wants to work on his game and all that. So the challenge for me is not just to go to the guys you can naturally gravitate to. It's to work on the guys that are a struggle with. But then at the same time, it becomes a time. I've had this with a couple of players where, you can only help a person so much. And knowing when to sort of, fold your hand is a really important skill as well. And because otherwise, again, it's a difficult play. It's obviously quite time consuming, energy consuming, but if they're not willing to give it back as well and sort of invest in your relationship as well, you got to cut the cord at some stage. Someone told me that and it was really good advice. I can't remember who it was, but I really found that quite important.
Do you have any characteristics that you must have for people that you choose to work with? So obviously the Shute Shield is not an ideal environment. Sometimes we just have to work with what we've got. But do you have anything that you expect of people? Any characteristics that you like? Anything that you admire?
Like straight off the top of my head, like you've got to be hardworking. And I think, I've probably seen around the traps and just in my playing careers and all that. Like some people think they can be like even an assistant coach because, technically it's not as big a workload. Like, I think they can just sort of glide through it. You can't glide through it. Like you've got to invest and I'm not saying like 100% of the time, but 100% of the time you're at football or where you're doing your review and preview, you got to give that 100% of time because it won't work otherwise. Yeah. So, and I've sort of seen that even as a coach sort of thing, if you can't give that 100%, you sort of have to hop out, and which is really hard in this environment because, and I've had it with some coaches, like, their family life or their work life, they just can't give the time needed to be a coach there. And then you have to have that tough conversation with them. It's nothing against them. It's just in their life, they can't do that at the moment. So, and I got real respect for some of those other Shute Shield head coaches that I don't have kids or a family. But mate, I don't know how they do it with kids or a family. Like their time, they mustn't have a second to spare. So I'd imagine just how hardworking they are. But that's the first, when you ask me what I look for in a person, like a coaching staff, it's got to be, I take hardworking over anything else. I take hardworking over, a brilliant mind or super intelligent like that. Those things help. But hardworking would be the first one.
I don't think hard work guarantees success, but I don't think you can be successful without working hard.
Yeah, definitely. Well, mate, there's a quote like that, isn't it? I've used it many times. It's stuck in my phone, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. One of those variations on that. But I'm really, really behind that particular saying or the various incarnations of it.
Yeah, I obviously this is my first year as like a full forwards coach. Last year I was a forwards coach, but I was really only doing scrums. And each week this year I was going, am I putting in enough work here or am I doing too much? Because it's a really fine balance between getting it right. Like you don't want to overdo it, but you don't want to underdo it. and whatever we'd been doing had been working, so I've just stuck at it. But I haven't seen enough of other guys to know what's good and what is bad, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love to do more of that as well. Like just see other coach, like just, be a shadow for some of those really good coaches for a couple of weeks, something. Or, I watch a lot of those, when they're on Prime. What are they ones with the
All or nothing.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I really like those ones. Gives you a little bit of a glimpse of how other coaches do things like that, and then they're good ones to steal ideas off as well. Because yeah, well, I'm a little bit like you. Like I don't know, geez, have I prepared them enough, sort of thing, or have I underprepared them, sort of thing. Like I tend to think for myself, I sometimes go over the top, so I got to rein myself in, knowing that not everyone's a rugby nerd like me, and not everyone wants to think about rugby all the time. So there's actually really good examples. Like I used to send their reviews out on Saturday night to the boys. And then it was actually Simon Cron told me, mate, probably not the best idea. They're, trying to enjoy themselves on Saturday night, and they get 10 points on what they have to work on this week and how they fucked up and all that. You essentially ruin their weekend. So I don't do that anymore. I send them on Sunday morning as soon as I wake up. They wake up nice, and a young 20-year-old bloke wakes up hungover and he's got just a YouTube message from his coach. So yeah, it's a lot better.
How have you? Is that just something you've gauged yourself, or have you had someone look at what you've done and gone, Ben, that's too much, or is it just a gut instinct that you've gone, I think that might be the right amount, or?
Well, I ask guys like Chris Hickey, if I'm talking to another coach, this is sort of what I do. Do you think this is the right way? Some of them go, yeah, that's pretty good. Others go, oh, I don't know about this. So, and then I do think a lot of coaching is gut feeling as well. It's funny you mentioned that. I reckon there's a lot of intuition and a lot of luck that goes into being a really successful coach. So yeah, you gotta back your instincts at times as well.
Mate, this has been awesome. I've got a few rapid fire questions for you. We just talked about what makes a good coach, but let's ask the question formally to you. What characteristics make a good coach? We just talked a little bit about it then. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Two things. When you ask me that, two things pop into mind. They've got to be really hard work. Okay, you've got to be a hard worker. You read all about the coaches, and mate, some of them are crazy. Eddie Jones up to 3 a.m. So you got to be a hard worker. And the other big one, think about a guy like Wayne Bennett. You got to be able to manage personalities. Yeah. So they're the two off the top of my head. You got to be able to handle the 18-year-old superstar. You got to be handle the 32-year-old veteran sort of thing. So if you're a good man manager and you're hardworking, I reckon you're halfway there.
Do you think some people, this isn't one of the questions, this is something that just popped into my head, but do you think some people are more suited to being an assistant or a skills coach versus being a head coach? Or do you think some people might be suited to juniors? Like, do you think that there's a personality type that is suitable for each job?
200%. Yeah, I really do believe. I reckon you can look at some people and you go, he's an assistant coach. You talk to someone, he's definitely only an assistant coach sort of thing. So I do believe that. I don't know. I can't explain what it is, but you just get a feeling off people, or there's something, I don't know.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm having that debate with myself at the moment, whether I'd just be better off going all out as an assistant or having a crack at a higher job one day. I'd like to think that I'd want to challenge myself, but I don't know.
Well, it might be one of those things that people have to learn as well. Like, because for me, like I've never really been an assistant coach, so I don't know. Like, would I be a good assistant coach? I'd have to do it to find out. I'd like to think I could. And it's probably the same as you. Like, you're not going to know if you're a good head coach till you try it in some capacity, or you get a greater role. So I'd say give it a go.
Maybe that's what makes good head coaches, mate. Hey, are there any books, podcasts, movies, TV shows you recommend? We talked a little bit earlier about reading and some podcasts that you listen to. Are there any that you'd recommend to the people listening?
Yeah, so one of my favorite books is Pete Carroll's book when he was coaching the Seattle Seahawks. I can't think of the name off the top of my head.
I've got it on my Audible.
Yeah,
you keep talking and I'll find it.
And the other one, which I really, really enjoyed, which I really should look up to find the name for it, is there was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers from like 1985 to 92 when they were really successful. I can't remember what his name is now, which sort of ruins it a little bit. But they're the two off the top of my head, which I really enjoy. For some reason, I really like those sort of NFL books. Like they've got so much management and issues they have to do. I find them particularly interesting. The TV shows, like we mentioned, that those all or nothings, the Michael Jordan one, whatever that one was, I find them quite handy. And the podcast ones, if I just click on my phone right now, I know I listen to your one, so I'm being legitimate there. I'm not just giving you a plug. The Great Coaches Leadership and Life podcast, I seem to listen to that one. Johnny Wilkinson's one I find quite interesting. It's about exploring human potential in the England 10. That's a good one. And the Coaching Cultural podcast. They've got different coaches. I think it might be American off the top of my head, but it's all different sports. They'll interview, a hockey head coach or a netball head coach, a NFL head coach. I like those ones.
The Pete Carroll books Win Forever.
Yeah, love that one.
Great book. And I'm not sure the San Francisco 49ers book, but I want to look that up. Just a recommendation for you. Have you read A Season in the Sun?
No, what's that one?
It's on Brady's first year at Tampa Bay. Very good.
Really?
Very good book.
Is it his words or it's a ghostwriter?
No, it's
no,
it's written by an outside guy in consultation with what's the coach? In consultation with Bruce Arians. So it's really, it's actually pretty insightful because it was during the COVID period as well, and how he evolved himself into a brand new team and a new system, and how the coaches evolved themselves to him. It was really good.
Okay, I'll give that one. I'm trying to find. Okay, so Bill Walsh, The Score Will Take Care of Itself.
That's a fantastic book.
Yeah, that's sort of one of my favorite. The Score Takes Care of Itself. Yeah, they're the ones that I really enjoyed.
Nice, mate. Last question for you. This has been amazing. What advice would you give 18-year-old you?
It would be 100% like just your talent's not going to be like, as a rugby player, your talent's not going to get you there. Your hard work will. So I never trained or worked hard nearly enough. So I would just say, definitely work harder. And then like as myself as a person, whatever you're doing, to attack it at 100%. So whether that be uni studies, whether that be relationships, whether that be anything, if you're going to invest time in it, don't invest in it 75%, invest in it 100%.
Mate, that's a great way to end. Thank you for this, mate. That was awesome.
No, pleasure, mate. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, I've actually listened to a lot of the podcasts. I get something out of these as well. So hopefully I've been able to contribute in some small way.
Mate, just give me 1 second.